Listen now for these ancient words. Our Jesus story today is from the 17th chapter of Luke's Gospel. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." And when he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priest." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And then Jesus said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." And from the poet Rumi we read, "And still after all this time, the sun has never said to the earth, 'You owe me.'" Look what happens with love like that. It lights up the sky. This is ancient wisdom and holy word.
Thanks be to all that is wise and holy.
All creation is wisdom and holy word.
All creation sings of wisdom. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. And still, after all this time, the sun has never said to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with love like that. Rumi also said, "Gratitude is wine for the soul. Go on, get drunk." Here at Jubilee, we often repeat the Meister Eckhart quote that we have on the wall back here. If the only prayer you ever said was thank you, that would suffice. And I believe with all my heart that walking through life saying thank you is enough. On waking each morning, we can say, "Another day, thank you." On getting out of bed, for a body that moves, for lungs that breathe, thank you. On having your coffee or breakfast, for all the people who work to bring this into my home and my cup, those who plant and tend the plants, those who harvest and prepare the crop, those who package and ship the ingredients, those who stock the shelves and manage the store where I buy them. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. To the earth and the sun and the rain and the pollinators who provide these gifts, thank you. It is possible to walk through your whole day noticing, appreciating, expressing gratitude inwardly and outwardly. And when you practice doing this day in and day out, making it a habit of your heart, it will change you. But there will be things in your life that do not immediately call forth your gratitude. There will be loss and suffering. There will be meanness and oppression. There will be abuse and dishonesty. Can we say thank you even when we don't feel it? If we release gratitude into the world, might we also release resentment's grip on our hearts? I recently began listening to a podcast series by Anderson Cooper called All There Is. Highly recommend. In the first episode, Cooper is going through his mother's New York City apartment 2 years after his death, finally able to face looking through all of her things as he prepares to sell the place. Now, Cooper's mother is Gloria Vanderbilt of Vanderbilt fame, and she and Anderson were extremely close. Anderson's father died of heart disease when he was 10. And then 10 years later, his only brother committed suicide. Those losses remain at the heart of all that Anderson Cooper has done and become. In the subsequent episodes, Cooper interviews people who have suffered great loss. And the first interview is with Stephen Colbert. Stephen, like Anderson, lost his father at age 10. Stephen's father died in an airplane crash along with 2 of Stephen's brothers. Both of these men talk about their lives being before and after. Before the great loss and after. And now both men have also lost their mothers, with whom they were both very close. But both mothers lived long lives, and both lived decades shaped by their losses. Cooper begins the interview remembering a previous talk he'd had with Colbert when Colbert had quoted Lord of the Rings author J.R. Tolkien saying, "What punishments of God are not also gifts?" Cooper, understandably, found that a difficult saying. And after thinking about it for 3 years, asked Colbert to say more. Well, as it turns out, Colbert did not quote Tolkien quite right, but he got the gist of a key belief of Tolkien's. Now, Tolkien's own father had died when he was 4, and his mother died when he was 12. He was moved from one foster situation to another. He was separated from the first love of his life. And then he served in World War I, where all of his closest friends died. By the time he was 20, Tolkien had suffered unimaginable loss. And his faith, which is reflected in his writings, was based in a trust that those things that cause us to suffer most are also the things that can most awaken us to the beauty of life. Now, he didn't say that God caused these things, much less punished us with them, but rather the things we experience as most emotionally punishing, that is our suffering, are the places where our greatest gifts may emerge. Our suffering, Tolkien said, can be useful to us and to the world, but not when we are in the midst of the pain. Only much later, when we've had time to work through it. So Colbert, in this interview with Cooper, takes that idea and responds to it saying, if you're grateful for your life, you have to be grateful for all of it. I lost my father and my brothers when I was 10, and that realization did not come until I'm on the doorstep of middle age. Literally walking down the street, I was struck with this realization that I had a gratitude for the pain of that grief. It doesn't take the pain away. It doesn't make the grief less profound. In some ways, it makes it more profound, he says, because it allows you to look at it. It allows you to examine your grief in a way that is not like holding a red-hot ember in your hands, but rather seeing that pain as something that can warm you and light your knowledge of what other people might be going through. What if, around our Thanksgiving tables this year, we invited each person to share their deepest grief? Breathe. Can you be grateful that you experienced love you later lost? Grateful that you became more compassionate as a result? Or simply grateful that you are alive to experience this present moment, and that part of living long enough means living long enough to suffer loss? That might be a different way to talk about gratitude this year. And it might invite us away from the politics and personalities that divide us and into a grief that unites us as human beings, all just walking this road we call life. You may know the Buddha story of the woman who lost her only child. She was so stricken by grief, she tried everything to bring the child back to life, and finally she carried her dead child to the Buddha, devastated and desperate, and she asked that he revive her. The Buddha looked on this mother with compassion and said, "Okay, go back to your village and collect a mustard seed from every household that has not been touched by death, and then bring those seeds back to me. And with them, I will make a remedy to bring your daughter back to life." Filled with hope, the woman returned to her village, carrying her child's body from door to door, explaining what the Buddha had said. But at one home after another, as people listened sympathetically, they had to tell her they could not help because their home had also known death. And when she got to the last door and found that this household had also experienced death, her heart cracked open, and she laid down the child that she had been carrying. Her grief poured out of her, and when she was exhausted and spent, she understood. What breaks our heart is also what connects us to each other. The pain erupts from the love we've felt. Would we give up that love in order to stop the pain? This is what Stephen Colbert also asked. If you are grateful for your life, can you be grateful for all of it? Breathe. I think about those who have suffered not just shocking losses around them, but those who have suffered terrible things being done to them. Those who have experienced abuse, oppression, war. What does gratitude look like in those cases? Cole Arthur Riley, the creator of Black Liturgies, writes of her own and her family's suffering with tenderness and honesty in her exquisite book, This Here Flesh. In the midst of tragedies, both personal and communal as a Black woman, she looks for the spiritual practices that bring salvation. And in her chapter on wonder, she says, "Some wonders have a way of holding us even in the deterioration of this present world. Wonder and beauty," she writes, "are not precise cures for disillusionment, but they certainly can stave off the despair of it." Wonder and beauty are not precise cures for disillusionment, but they can stave off the despair of it. Etty Hillesum was a young Jewish woman who wrote beautiful journals as she lived through Nazi Germany. She, like Anne Frank, eventually died in a concentration camp. Her writings were gathered into a book called An Interrupted Life. Etty wrote in this diary, "Sometimes when I stand in some corner of the camp, my feet planted on the earth, my eyes raised toward heaven, tears run down my face, tears of deep emotion and gratitude." The camp she speaks of is the Nazi death camp. Imagine being like Eddie Hillisum, watching the world go down in horrific violence all around you and standing there in the corner of your camp, that is the place of terror, and planting your feet on the earth and raising your eyes to the heavens and letting yourself feel it all until the gratitude comes. Breathe. To lead a life of gratitude is not simply to find joy in the easy moments, thankful for the beautiful sunset over the mountains, thankful for that exquisite moment of birth, but to learn the difficult path of being grateful for all of it. In the story of the 10 lepers, the point seems to be that the one leper who returns to give thanks is the one that is not part of the faith community. That one is a Samaritan, a group avoided by the Hebrews. Now, all lepers were avoided, and maybe even within that leper community, this one was shut out. An outcast within a community of outcasts. Maybe this Samaritan experienced a deeper sense of gratitude because he had lost more than the others. Because he had been more alone. Gratitude has a way of softening our hearts. We open our clenched, graspy fist and let in this present moment. Gratitude is like that caffeine that wakens us from the sleepy haze of walking through our days without appreciating them. And in those moments, when we let this thankful grace wash over us, when our hearts soften, and our hands open, and our minds awaken, we can see that everyone around us needs this grace. And maybe, just maybe, we're a little more available to offer it to them. May it be so.